Is it possible to become financially independent as an introvert? What would it be like to walk that path? Do you need to make any modifications along your route? Or could it be possible that introversion is actually a superpower? These are all very interesting questions to ask, especially for me, because I consider myself to be introverted and I have achieved some level of financial independence. First and foremost, I do need to give credit for this video idea to Felix, who left a comment on a previous video. And I also want to say that I genuinely appreciate all of you participating and making this more of a conversation as opposed to me just blabbering by myself. So to kick this conversation off, I think we need to start by making something very clear. When we say the word introvert, what do we actually mean? Because in today's world, it seems like many people would say, oh yeah, me, I'm an introvert. I love to stay in. And yet we also talk about being an introvert as if it's some sort of special and unique thing. Sometimes we even use this term as an excuse to not do something, even if it may be good for us and better our lives. And in this case, the line between being an introvert versus being scared of something like socializing gets pretty blurred. So let's try and define exactly what we are talking about here. If I go and look at the Merriam-Webster definition of introvert right now, I can see that it generally makes the case that it is someone who directs more energy inwardly as opposed to outwardly. They might say less, they might be physically less animated, and they probably enjoy spending time alone with themselves. But what I personally notice from this definition is that while it does mention the word shy in one particular reference, the emphasis is not placed upon being shy or unconfident. Another commonly referenced aspect of being an introvert is that they build energy when they spend time alone, and they can find that heavy socialization is draining. So I think there's a number of things that we need to kind of parse out here. And first of all, in my opinion, if we were to look at the distribution of personalities across the population, we would find that it probably takes the shape of a bell curve. And on either side of this bell curve would be introversion at its extreme and extroversion at its extreme. And I really like bell curves, and I find it fascinating to look at them because they appear to be the distribution of many of the natural phenomenon that we find in the universe, whether that's something like, in this case, personality, it could be IQ, it could even be the distribution of stock market returns, or it could be where people fall along the political spectrum. Spending so much of our time online these days, it may seem that populations are distributed something more like this, where the extremes have the most people and the middle has the least. But I think that's because the extreme ends are generally the loudest and the middle is generally the quietest. So it can kind of skew your perception of reality. But reality almost always actually looks something like this. In the case of extroversion versus introversion, we would probably find that most people are somewhere in the middle, having aspects of both being an introvert as well as an extrovert. And that makes sense, right? Having some sort of a balance between being an introvert and an extrovert. I mean, most people are at least a little bit shy. Most people generally don't like going up and talking in front of large groups of people. But at the same time, most people also like at least a little bit of socialization in their lives. And that includes me. I'm definitely not a pure introvert by any stretch of the means, but I do skew towards that side of the personality curve. The reason I can say that with confidence is because I know that for me, most of my energy is built internally and also directed internally. And people who know me in real life make a lot of jokes about the fact that I make YouTube videos because they think it's so funny how I say so many words at once, when in reality I'm a very quiet person in real life. But the funny thing about YouTube is, at least for me, every time I sit down, I feel comfortable because I feel like I'm talking to a small group of like-minded people. But in general, that's the gist of the definition that I would use to describe an introvert. Somebody who both builds and directs energy mostly internally. If you have a different take, a different definition, a different anything to add to this conversation, please feel free to use the comment section below. Again, I really appreciate this being much more of a conversation as opposed to just a one-way thing. So in my case, skewing towards introversion, at least the way that I would define it, I believe that this has actually helped me in my pursuit of not only financial independence, but other things in my life that I'm interested in too, like spirituality or taking care of my body. That's because a lot of the particular things that I'm interested in order to succeed in them or pursue them effectively, it usually means deviating from a lot of social norms. And that's much easier to do if you enjoy doing things by yourself. Most people around me growing up barely knew how to manage their money at a basic level, not alone how to master it. And that's not entirely their fault, but it did mean I was pretty much on my own when it came to that. How about trying to study Eastern philosophy or Western mysticism growing up in a predominantly Catholic area? Yeah, definitely on my own in that regard. And don't even get me started on trying to follow a good diet or take care of yourself from a health standpoint when the majority of the population still follows something like the food pyramid, which thinks that cereal is a good thing to have for breakfast. So again, largely on my own in this regard. But that's okay to me because I actually enjoy being on my own. And if I didn't, I either couldn't do it or I would have to learn some introversion as a skill. In the same way, it may benefit us to learn extroversion. But I believe being an introvert could just as easily hurt you if your definition of being an introvert also includes things like being shy or lacking confidence in yourself. Of course, in the modern world, it is now much easier for somebody who is shy or who does lack confidence in themselves to be able to find success in a variety of different domains. This is especially true when it comes to making money. The ways to earn an income without ever having to speak to a soul or to leave your house has to be at an all-time high. The infrastructure to build 6, 7, 8+ figure businesses now exists solely online. Take the company Wise, for example, who is sponsoring today's video. They allow me to set up a business account which lets me send and receive money in tons of different currencies at the market exchange rate while allowing me to earn a high interest rate on that money. Working online as I do and dealing internationally, having something like Wise is absolutely essential. The interesting thing about Wise is they're not an international bank. They're better because A, banks generally give you a very bad exchange rate on currency conversion, which is a sneaky fee that costs you a lot of money. B, they generally do not offer a high interest rate. It's usually something like 0.1% or less. And C, they generally aren't very transparent about all the fees or how they stack up against competitors. Wise, on the other hand, literally will show you in real time how their currency conversion rate compares to other companies. I mean, look, I can check right now how much it would cost me to send 1,000 Canadian dollars to Europe and see that Wise would be the second cheapest. The fact that they're showing this is absolutely refreshing. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that before. And they've also included a little blurb here to explain why they might be second place in this particular conversion. On top of this, they have a debit card which allows you to spend and withdraw cash in over 50 different currencies. So whether you need to send, receive, hold, or spend various currencies around the world, Wise has all of your bases covered. Check out the link in the description below to get your first transfer up to £500 for free with your new Wise account. Thank you so much for sponsoring this video. So while I think the existence of these types of tools is probably a net benefit to society at large, I worry that it is increasingly allowing us to neglect aspects of extroversion. In the same way, it may benefit somebody who is very loud, highly reactive, or physically kind of out of control to learn some introversion. It may also benefit a deeply introverted person to get out of their head once in a while. Now, I want to make something also very clear here. I'm not talking about clinical psychiatric diagnoses. I'm just talking about my own experiences and my own opinions here. What I'm trying to speak to more is the fact that I used to let the label of being an introvert basically act as an excuse to let something like being shy get the better of me. Essentially, it allowed me a way out of facing social fears. And I don't think that's going to do anybody any good. So not only is that going to harm you in your pursuit of something like financial independence, but just in general in life. And that's where I think there's a certain danger that can be associated with calling yourself an introvert. You can be confident socially. You can be confident in yourself. You can speak to large groups of people. You can dance at parties. You can do all these things and still be an introvert, in my opinion. You can cultivate the skill set of extroversion while still loving your peace and quiet. And I think that's where the superpower of introversion can begin to manifest, because I wasn't confident outwardly until I was fully confident inwardly. How could I not be confident outwardly if I was confident inwardly, right? If you can keep a promise or commitment to yourself, how can you not keep it for others? If you can take care of yourself, how can you not take care of others? And if you can speak kindly and honestly to yourself, how can you not speak kindly and honestly to others? If being an introvert to you means sitting at home, stewing over things, speaking unkindly to yourself, and refusing to go into the outside world, I don't think that's being an introvert. I think that's having problems and refusing to face them. I know because I've done that. But in the pursuit of financial independence or so many other things in life, not only do you need to be able to solve your own problems, but you also have to be able to solve the problems of other people. My partner, Justine, is in the midst of building her own design firm with her two best friends, and we were just talking about this the other day. She's constantly dealing with problems associated with other people, and she's in the service industry, so this is kind of the name of the game. But she was complaining about this because she felt like, man, I don't want to deal with all these problems that are caused by or associated with other people. I just want to spend my time doing my craft and designing. But I think it recently clicked for her that, of course, she has to be a skilled designer. But she may have to be an even better problem solver. And that requires the cultivation of some extroversion to go with introversion. And she's somebody who is very, very good at that. From our conversation, I had a few takeaways as well. I realized that at the heart of everything, humanity is cooperative in nature. And at the heart of that cooperation is the ability to act unselfishly and with empathy. Fortunately, we do have a reward mechanism in society which allows you to get paid to solve other people's problems, so we don't just have to rely on the goodwill of everybody. But I think I realized that a past version of myself had a very false sense of empathy, where I would look out at the world and say, wow, look how bad we humans are to one another or to the environment and the world. I'm going to withdraw from this and not participate. Nowadays, though, I see that as probably being worse than somebody who mindlessly participates, because at least they're not pretending that they're holier than thou. And I think that person is likely to fail in the realm of something like the pursuit of financial independence. My success with my own money didn't really start until I started to be helpful to other people. At my first job, that meant interacting with people every day who I didn't really share anything in common with and who I was generally uncomfortable around. And at my second job, It was the same thing, but at a larger scale. Every job I've had was the same in this regard, and so was the lesson. We need to work together. I think now more than ever. Because in the laptop era where we communicate via email or behind anonymous usernames, how many of us say things that are rude or unhelpful on a regular basis that we would never say to somebody's face in real life? I'll be the first to raise my hand and say that I definitely have. And in this regard, we are all withdrawn introverts, sitting atop our high horses, casting judgment as if we have the authority to, while the rest of the world burns outside. And so today, before the day's over, I'm going to say hello to somebody passing by on the street with a smile. I'm going to solve a few problems for myself and for other people, make some money in the process, and then I think I'll probably sit on my ass and continue reading this wonderful book by Aldous Huxley. And with that, I think I've said 99% of the words that I will say today, so goodbye.